Right, we are now moving into the panel discussion about building alliances. Today I've got three speakers. I've got Eleanor Ball, who's Director of Graphic Structures. I've got Phil Isaac, who's co-founder of SimpleWorks. And I've got, oh, Bola, I should have practiced this one.
You're gonna struggle.
That's on you.
I've got Bola Ogun. Do you want? I don't want to try it, Bola. I'm really sorry.
Ogun
Ogamethan?
Yeah.
Teach me it.
Bola Ogamethan.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Director of Cicerin Engineers. We're going to start off with Eleanor leading the discussion. Then there's going to be a section for Bola, a section for Phil. If you have any questions, throw them in at any point on the chat function, and I'll pick them up and throw them in as we go. But this is basically a live panel discussion. So I'm going to go on mute now, and Eleanor, it's over to you.
Thank you, Kate. I'm Eleanor from Graphic Structures. I'm co-founder and director. Graphic Structures is a London-based consultancy. We do structural and civil, and we are 12 people, and we've been going for about 5 years. So when I was asked about building business alliances, my first sort of thought process was how we've built Graphic Structures by using lots of other SMEs to support us. And that allows us to adapt to our changing needs as we've grown. And it helps me sort of focus on building the business, really. So examples of that are that we've got an IT consultancy who do all of our IT, they do all our licensing, they help us buy computers, VPN, everything like that. They are amazing. We have an external company that we use for drafting. So we actually do have an in-house technician now, but they are our additional resource. They help us out when we've got larger jobs that need drafting. In our early days, we collaborated with a flood risk and drainage specific engineer company that helped us, and we went together and bid with them for larger projects. We don't actually use them anymore because we've now got those engineers in-house. So that's a good example of a stepping stone of collaboration that allowed us to then grow into that space. Obviously, we've got an accountant, but some more niche ones, we've got an HR consultant. Now they really help us with all our staff documentation, our contracts, protecting us in the event of a problem with our employees, but also providing services to our employees like counselling and stuff like that. We've got health, safety and welfare consultant. The reason we have that is because we are on construction line and they are our competent advisor. And we have a marketing consultant, which is quite a new thing for us as we're coming up for 5 years. It's someone helping us steer the company in terms of what we're trying to achieve in our external marketing. And lastly, we have a business advisor and someone we just meet with once every other month who reflects back to us what we said we were going to do and what we are doing and helps us steer the company in the right way. So the point of this is that we collaborate with all these different businesses that support us to be what we are better at, which is engineers and supporting our team and delivering projects. So that was my take on collaboration and building business alliances. Pass over to Bola.
Thank you, Eleanor. Hi all, my name is Bola Ogamethan, Director at Cicerin Engineers. So we've been going for probably about 2 years now, or just over 2 years, and we're currently a team of about 4 people, 4 to 5 people. I say 4 to 5 because we have some external resources, and I think for us, we're really keen on collaboration and also collaboration with other engineers. And for me, collaboration is all about, sharing ideas, helping the industry to raise the standards, i.e. helping us as engineers raise our standards. We're in a situation now, or in a world now where things are changing. We heard about it earlier on today. Things are changing. We've got to be able to, lead in that change. We're starting to use new ways of doing things. We're starting to use novel materials, novel processes. Working with other engineers is a good way to share ideas and to be able to tackle those sorts of challenges. It's also helped us in the past where we have grown and we've outsourced some of our resources. So there's some work that's come in and we needed some extra help. And likewise, people that we know who are also run their companies, they've come to us and asked us to help them. So it works both ways, and it's quite good to have that support network, that ongoing peer-to-peer support network. Something similar to what probably a lot of us would be used to when we were in larger companies. So for me, collaborating with other engineers is extremely important. It's necessary for sharing ideas, necessary for raising our standards. There's a couple of examples where, where at the moment we're in a climate emergency, so we know what we have to do as an industry. And it's for us as, not only engineers, but company leaders to take action. We are not able to just leave it to larger companies. We've got to do it together, and actually getting together to do that is a great way of doing that. And also social impacts. One thing that I suppose we don't talk much about is social impact, and how us as engineers can help with the communities, help with society, help with actually putting ourselves out there to the public and giving back. So for me, that's the reason why I feel collaboration is a good thing, it's a great thing, and I would definitely encourage it. Phil, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bola. So yeah, I'm Phil Isaac, director and co-founder of SimpleWorks. So we're also based in London, and there was so we had 4 original sort of founders, and we've kind of grown in the last 2.5 years. There's now 10 of us, and we also kind of use external freelancers, consultants, in the way sort of Eleanor talked about, mostly kind of on the technical side. But the other thing, I suppose, sort of building upon things that Bola talked about, I think the thing that's really interesting to us is about kind of learning from other engineers, collaborating with other engineers. And I guess, we found when we set up, we had so many of these sort of what seemed like really stupid questions, but we were going through, and having never set up a company before, we'd all been engineers for quite a long time, but we've never set up a company. And we had, all of these kind of, HR related questions, legal questions, even the small stuff, do you have an accountant? I never had to get an accountant before, setting up a company and stuff. And actually, one of the things we've really found, through kind of just talking and being open with people in the industry is that, lots of all small companies have to go through these sort of standard kind of things. And actually, if there's an opportunity to kind of help each other out in those kind of, I'm going to call them like a little bit mundane areas, then that frees us up to kind of focus on the things that we're good at, which is, like Anna said, engineering. That's why, we all kind of, I'm sure it's probably why 99% of people set up their companies. They wanted to do more engineering and less of the other stuff. So, I think when you're in a big company, you can pick up a phone or you can go and see somebody who's an expert, who will deal with payroll, who will deal with, legal reviewing of contracts and stuff. Whereas when you're running your own small company, you have to do all of that yourself. And I think, to us, I think that's the really interesting kind of area of collaborating and learning from each other, of just those sort of, just help each other up, help each other along, and, enable us all to kind of focus on the real bigger challenges that sort of, Bola alluded to, of like, we're in the midst of a climate emergency. I think it's better that we all spend our time focusing on that than, how to do a really good payroll spreadsheet. I don't do the payroll, so I'm actually not sure what's involved in it, but, spreadsheets, I assume. Yeah, that's my sort of take, I suppose, on it.
Right, great questions then. What are the pros and cons of collaborating to ensure the quality of work that you're delivering?
You mean with other engineers, I suppose?
Yeah. So if you're outsourcing design work, if you're outsourcing drafting, have you had any positive experiences, any negative experience of ensuring that it's the quality that your company wants to represent?
Okay, I can talk about that in both ways. Like from a drafting perspective, I know, talked about that we've got this external consultancy that do just drafting. That's all they do, and they are amazing at it. They're so good, and the reason they're good is because they're also the type of people that have gone out and set their own company up, so they've got their own reputation to withhold, and so they do the best that they are capable of, and that is really, really good. And so I think it works for us. It works really well because it's on an ad hoc basis as well. So, but they're also not client facing, so that for us, we can control what they're doing. They're amazingly good quality, but we're also not depending on them to sort of represent us, if that makes sense. And I suppose that's where I'd say it can be a bit tricky, and it working together with other engineering firms where you're expecting both to be client facing. That's where the relationship has to be really good, because you have to be very well aligned in how you deliver. And so we like to think of ourselves as being very proactive and quite sort of on the front foot with our clients. And what we've found that's not necessarily how everyone works, or that like what my clients might not be the primary client for someone that I'm collaborating with. So when you're being represented by another engineering firm, we were talking about this the other day, like there needs to be a lead, there needs to be someone that's responsible for that client relationship, I think. But
yeah, no, that's definitely the case. Phil, you got any thoughts? I saw you kind of nodding away there.
No, I think it's a really interesting point. Just in terms of that kind of quality and stuff. And I think I mean, I suppose never sort of thought about it in the way that Eleanor described it, which is why I sort of probably nodding away in the background there. But I think we've kind of used external drafting kind of companies in the past, and I think I think the level of quality that we've got through is actually really high. And I think like Eleanor's saying, I think actually that is connected to having a reputation to uphold. But I definitely think that if you are using kind of freelance staff, it's about kind of investment, I suppose, of them investing in you a little bit. And I think that's really important to kind of there's definitely kind of more checking, I think, that's kind of involved at that level and stuff. And it's not so it's also more difficult for people to kind of maybe understand your kind of company ethos if they're coming in as well, just sort of on an ad hoc basis. And that's something that's been really important to us as we've grown SimpleWorks, of like having a kind of company ethos that's sort of representative of our work, and that's kind of our external view. And whilst freelance staff aren't necessarily kind of front facing, I think it's just really important that people buy into, I guess, what we're trying to do. So.
Yep. I've got another question here. It's about resourcing and actually being able to collaborate. So you've got niche specialists, you've got your civils, engineering and everything. You've got your reinforcement detailers. Everyone at the minute is pretty busy. How are you managing that with your collaboration? And do you have any experience of collaborating further afield where they might not have any resource or capability issues at the minute?
I think for us, we have similar, use the same services that you just mentioned there. And I think for us, what we always say to the guys that we work with is just tell us what your program is, because regardless of whatever we do or whatever we say, the client would appreciate, in our view, appreciate more if they're told when they're going to get it, rather than you tell them it's going to come at a certain time and it's late 2 weeks. So I think it's all about having that open relationship. And Eleanor touched on it before, and actually Phil mentioned it. It's making sure that you're picking the right partners, because they've got to be invested in the process as much as you have. And yes, it's your company that's client facing, it's your company that's on the line, but also they want a reputation as well. So it's about having that open and honest relationship at the beginning. What's your lead times? How does it work? If this job might not be the one for you, it might be the one for you, but just tell us what you've got and when you can deliver.
So how do you put in place, for these relationships, what kind of agreements or contractual terms do you have in place with the people that you're collaborating with? Does anyone want to field that one?
That
Eleanor,
really depends. So for example, if we have worked on a subconsultancy basis where we've actually got a back-to-back agreement with another. If someone is actually providing us with a design service, or we're providing them with a design service, then that has to be a back-to-back agreement, and PI needs to be back, and warranties back to the client, and so that can be sort of onerous, I suppose, in terms of contracts, particularly if you're looking at small jobs and you're thinking, you're spending more time putting the contract together than you are actually doing the work. So that needs consideration. But then, on the flip side, someone I think that in the previous question you're asking, when you're using external resource, for example, if you're taking things out of the company to India for RC detailing or to other countries where there is a lot more capacity, that is a different agreement. We as a company are taking responsibility for the quality of that work, and it sits under our PI entirely. So we check that work 100% in-house, and that goes out the door as us. So I think there's two different ways of doing it.
Yeah. The questions are rolling in thick and fast now, guys. One point to note is that if you do have your professional indemnity insurance with Griffiths and Armour, that they have an in-house team that will review contracts for you for free of charge as part of their insurance policy. So
Oh,
to note to everyone
amazing.
out there.
I can testify for that.
Yeah, we've utilised this many times.
Many times.
Let's see. How do you factor in fees for all these sub-consultant advisors, particularly in your infancy as a business?
I think where we've done it, we've tried to kind of get people in advance if we have the time. So if it's a bigger project that we're sort of bidding for, obviously you normally get a bit more time to kind of do it. And I think in that case, civils is one that, if we're working on a bigger project, we don't have the kind of capacity internally to do sort of big civils. So we'll go out to people and ask them to provide basically a kind of a quote for the work, and then we factor that into our fee proposals. To be honest, 100% honesty with the audience, we didn't do this on like one or two projects, and then when you kind of get quotes back when you're in your infancy, you're kind of a bit surprised at how much some of these things cost when you're like, oh, actually this in theory seemed quite simple. The same with say drafting work if it's going external. But I think the other thing though is also making sure if you're doing your fee, you have the right exclusions in it. So RC detailing would be a good example of something that we tend to exclude from our initial appointment. Steel connection design would be like, say, another one that, on small projects we tend to include, but bigger ones we'd exclude. So I guess the answer maybe is like, look at your exclusions. The way I look at it is you kind of want to give yourself, you don't want to tie yourself into something you don't know. So giving yourself scope at a later stage to kind of properly evaluate the fee is
I'd also say shop around, like get 2 or 3 quotes. That's what everyone else does.
That leads into another great question here. So someone has said, we have also found that one freelance that we used to have has let us down. Another one, their quality is not high enough. Do you interview? How do you find people to subcontract or subconsult to?
I think it is, that it is a bit of trial and error. I think when I say shop around, both in terms of getting pricing back, but also, we've certainly worked with people once, twice, and then thought, not so much, and moved on and found a different relationship. And that's part of, growing the business and growing relationships and growing your network. And you sometimes relationships work and other times they don't. And you've just got to be honest with yourself when it's not working and move on.
Yeah, this leads. Do you know what? This is flowing perfectly, guys. This moves me into, have you had an instance when your missions and your motivation drivers differ from those that you are trying to collaborate with? So have you guys had a completely different outlook from the people that you're collaborating with?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that is actually quite often, that can happen quite often. And I think one of the things that we do is we try to keep a core team. And what that means is, we build relationships with them, and then you can quickly see if you are aligned in terms of your culture, in terms of where you're trying to get to. And as Eleanor said, it's a lot of it, you have to be on the ball. Well, from us, we've always had to be on the ball in the sense of making sure that they deliver what you want, how you want, if you like. And if it doesn't work, don't be afraid to find someone else. But for me, to answer that question, it's about just building relationships. It's rather than using them as a time charge sort of like resource, building relationships, see if we can, if they can understand the way we work, we can understand what works for them, and that could be a good long-term partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely about making those partnerships. Right, where to go to next? Oh, this one's sensitive. How do you protect your own company intellectual property and in-house developed tools when using external consultants?
Yeah.
Are you going to answer this
Oh,
one,
look,
Phil?
you've all come off mute. You've all got opinions about this one. Right, Phil,
You go first. You go first,
came off
Phil.
slightly first.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're not particularly protective about all these things, maybe because we don't have loads of in-house tools that we've been developing and stuff. But I think the other thing is coming from big practices. I think there's sometimes like an idea that, you know, you're the only one who's done something. And actually, I think we try and actually follow an approach of actually being quite open and, you know, sharing of the things that we develop, in a sense of like, you know, if we've already developed it, we're already moving on to the next thing, if you know what I mean. And therefore, you know, I think then there's actually, and I suppose the other thing to say is that, you know, we actually try and take advantage of all the other resources that are out there, you know. So if you say on the you know, the thing that springs to mind, computational side of things, you know, TT's Thornton Somersetti's core team, and you know, have lots of their resources freely available online, which you can kind of, you know, that's like Revit plugins, Grasshopper plugins and stuff. And actually, in a way, I mean, this is obviously kind of a much bigger kind of conversation, but the whole industry would be better off if everyone was more open about sharing these things. And I think, you know, I don't know how many people on the call have signed up to the kind of, you know, Engineers Declare, but actually one of the points about that is sharing data and sharing information. And, you know, so I'd be interested to, you know, yeah, that's a bigger conversation.
I absolutely do not disagree with that. I think the open source nature of information and that sharing and that collaboration is something that really helps small companies get together, collaborate and grow. You have to be open to share. Like if you're going to be there, if you're going to be part of these groups and trying to share, no one's going to, you know, they're not going to want to play with you if you're going to keep your toys all to yourself. Like it's not going to foster great relationships if you're all sat there going, you can't see my client list.
Yeah.
It's about trust, isn't it?
100%.
So if there's people out there who want to get involved in these discussions, how do they go about making contacts with other like-minded engineers?
Well, I'm not really sure. Yeah.
I can go again on this one if you want. I don't want to be the one talking and stuff, but I mean, one of the things we sort of got involved with quite a little while ago now, you know, and I think it's fair to say would open the invite to everyone, is we actually sort of set up a kind of a Slack kind of group, a kind of a community for kind of like-minded engineers. And, you know, as people kind of come along, and if anyone wants to sort of join, it's not too much of a rigorous process for membership of it. And that kind of just gives the opportunity to kind of, you know, we have a sort of an informal Slack channel that, you know, people can kind of just contribute or like ask questions. A lot of it's kind of, you know, HR related questions or legal questions and stuff, but kind of gives that forum and stuff. So I think, you know, obviously if anyone's sort of interested in that, maybe follow up with me afterwards if they want to, and I can kind of put them in touch on that side of things. And that's the kind of community of engineers.
I think
we can do that.
Yeah, I would add to that and say that, like, for me personally, all my network of other engineering firms has come through two ways. One is just from previous colleagues, and many of which have gone and started businesses, and there's quite a sort of a network in that respect, but also through networking, like actually being out and about. And, you know, when you're at these networking events, obviously your prime objective is not to speak to other engineers, but it is always useful. And I talked at the beginning about our IT consultancy, for example. The only reason I found them is from talking to another engineer and them saying, oh, we've got these amazing guys, you should try them. And I was just like, oh my God, you know, they're amazing. They're so good. And I know that just through making links in the industry.
Well, that actually perfectly, it's like you can see these questions, but
I can't.
Like, I don't know how you're doing it. How have you found establishing links during the last 12 months when you can't meet them face to face and do that type of interactive networking?
So difficult. Yeah, I found it really difficult. The way I've done it is to stay in, like, to focus on certain groups where I've got strong connections. I mean, for me, obviously that's reasonably easy. I've got a lot of like women in engineering, women in industry groups, which have been really supportive. And they've been if anything, I'd say that some of those groups have been closer together because the groups, when they meet on Zoom and stuff like that, have been more intimate somehow. But it has been very, very difficult to maintain contacts with clients. I think, yeah, we've struggled with that. Bola,
do you guys feel the same?
Yeah, I think for us, it's pretty similar. We're part of a few groups, a few networking events. I mean, get involved, really. I mean, for example, we get involved in the committee level, running some networking events, and you know, you meet so many people being involved. And I think one of the key things I would say really is be ready to give your time and to help others, because once you do that, you know, you will be surprised how A, fulfilling it is, and B, you know, it's just people wants to help you. And that's one thing, that's why we feel, I suppose everyone on this call feels collaboration is great, because you know, we're not going out there to try and get people to help us necessarily. You know, you also going out there and helping them. And it's the same with networking. You know, we are fortunate, lucky, and very grateful for the people that we know. And we're also always there to help out whenever we can. And that's one thing I would say, and that's one thing that's helped us throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm just going to build upon that actually, because that sort of perfectly links into it. Yeah, well, I was thinking of stuff. And the thing that we've all really found is just the level of support that we've received, you know, in the sort of 2.5 years since we founded, just through like talking to people and asking for things. You know, people are so unbelievably helpful and have been so helpful and supportive. And you know, it kind of always reminds you, you know, if you ask, people actually will normally kind of trying to help you. And I think there's sort of something, you know, never being sort of scared of asking, you know, for either help, whether it's, you know, from other engineers, or, you know, if it is kind of client related, you know, look at networks, you know, see who knows who, and, you know, don't be afraid to ask somebody, you know, for an intro to somebody else. I think, you know, everyone knows the kind of everyone knows how the industry works. People know that, you know, need to know people to get work. So yeah,
I think I founded Static Dynamic in May 2020, in the midst of the first lockdown. I was homeschooling. I had a 1-year-old at the time who couldn't go into nursery because nurseries were shut. And I actually found the last 12 months a bit of a leveling playing field. I was able to reconnect with people digitally. I didn't have to spend a lot of money entertaining. I didn't have to buy tickets to the rugby. I didn't have to host black tie events. Like, there is no, it really, as a small business, COVID has kind of, it's been a bit of a playing field leveler in terms of networking, as far as I'm, you know, concerned. I'm really lucky that I had a black book of people to talk to. But I also then find, through collaboration with other engineers, that they were starting, so a lot of companies were furloughing staff, the bigger ones, and there was a lot of sort of medium-sized companies with sort of maybe offices of 25, 30 people that were suddenly being asked to come into a lot bigger jobs, because clients were finding that the resources with some of the larger companies weren't there. And as they jumped up in COVID, they were saying, oh, so-and-so, Kate, has founded a company. Why don't you go and talk to her? So I actually got like probably about 5 or so architects just coming to me because other engineers were having to reshuffle what their work was. So it was a great way and a great time to kind of collaborate. Right, I've got one last question. Have you had experience of being on the other side of the coin and been the sub-consultant? And if yes, did this affect how you approached collaborating with others?
We have. We didn't really like it. we did some consult to a company that had a really good client relationship but didn't have the resourcing to deliver the job. And so they wanted us just to come in and do the calcs. They didn't want us to have any relationship. They didn't want us to go to site. They wanted to do all of that. So they were leading it and managing it, and we were doing all the background calculations and building regs and stuff like that. And we realized that that's actually not how we like to work. We love that relationship. We want to work collaboratively. We want to solve problems. And for us, it's about the client relationship as much as about delivering the engineering. So I think that's an interesting point in terms of how would we therefore subcontract back. And actually the result is that what we don't do is try and hold on to jobs that we can't do. If we're going to collaborate with other engineers, we give them the work. We hand it on, we give them names, and we let them deal with it. And we collaborate in a way that we share clients and we share work. When we ourselves can't do it, we don't try and hold it. That's what we do.
I mean, I think
Yep.
similar here. I mean, we've been sub-consulting for other engineers, and to be honest, we didn't mind it. We knew the people we were doing work for. We actually liked them, so we're happy to help out. And it was on that ad hoc basis. And we have, I suppose, like Eleanor said, you know, we have friends who've also started up their own businesses, and you know, we've helped them out. And again, we get lots of projects that come in that we either can't do or don't want to do, and we put them in the direction of our other engineer friends. So we've been on both sides in terms of how it affects our approach to, if you like, engaging with other subcontractors. For us, I think it's just a case of respecting people's time and respecting, you know, their input, because as I was saying before, when it comes to resourcing, when it comes to programming, when it comes to managing time, we just got to be open and honest with each other, and that's what's worked for us.
Brilliant. Excellent. Right. Okay. I need to just say thank you now to Eleanor, Paula, and Phil. That was great. Great discussion.